Welcome to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, Ed, along with Justin, Brad, and Dan. We're previewing Clownheads 5. This is year number 2, so excited to take a look at this league. Take it away, Dan.
All right, let's start right off with Mahomes. Solid QB play with Tua, Wilson, Tannehill as the number 3 quarterback. Solid running back with Henry, Chubb. Mixed wide receiver group with Justin Jefferson, D-Hop, Elijah Moore, and Robert Woods. A solid tight end group with Freiermuth and Komet. Solid team all around with a great blend of young talent with some older guys. Could use a little more firepower at wide receiver. But overall, this team's built for the playoffs. If you're in it at the end, maybe upgrade a few positions and try to go for it. The next team we're going to pull up is the real Brad Smith. Good starting quarterbacks with Lamar Jackson and Jordan Love, but you don't have a third starter. I think that's going to hurt as you move forward throughout the season. Washed up running backs with Javonte Williams, Kamara, and Mixon. These guys are not going to get it done this year. Injury prone, Kamara suspended. Mixon, he was a mess in the offseason. I just think that their production is going to decline. I'm interested to see about Javonte Williams, though. I think that if he stays healthy, he could produce. I know Ed's banking on that. Your wide receiver group led by DK. I love Dotson. I think he's going to play a lot better this year with Howell as his QB. As we go down, your tight end group with Irv Smith and Tanyan, they're not going to get it done for you in this league. Upgrade this position at all costs if you want to win. If this is my team, I would try to rebuild to the 2024 draft, accumulate as much draft capital as I can, sell guys where I can to teams that are with a chance to win, and build through next year's draft with this team. Next up, we have Twistinator. What we got here, Justin? All right. You're starting off with QB Joe Burrow. After that, it's a little unproven with Howell. And I'm just not a big Mac Jones fan. I think he can get the job done as far as a real football quarterback, but as a fantasy football quarterback, just not a guy I covet and roster. But if he's going to be your number 3, it's better than not having any. It's a big year for him and Howell. See if they're going to be starters from this year on. So you might be, trying to follow that, and if can try to grab another quarterback. Your running back room led by Bijan has to feel like you're headed in the right direction. I'm not a huge fan of Swift, but maybe a change of scenery helps him. Maybe being in Philly is what's going to propel him to be, a top 5, top 10 running back. Your wide receiver room could use some help as well. I think Deontay will play better this year, but Watson, Bateman, and Burks have done nothing to show that they're capable of leading a fantasy team. I'm not saying that they won't, but as of right now, I don't feel that they are. Your tight end room with Mayer, Ferguson could use some help. Tight ends take a long time to develop, and if Mayer takes a while, it's going to cost you. I do like McBride, and I feel that he will provide a much bigger fantasy relevance this year than he did last year. I also think that you should take JSN off your taxi. You could use him this year. Something about those taxis, Justin. Next up is I have Circle the Wagons. Has some great young pieces in Jamar Chase and Zay Flowers. No starting quarterbacks. I mean, it's the first team I've evaluated with none. Without any QBs, I believe you are going to go from first to worst. They won the league last year with Tom Brady and Matt Ryan as the quarterbacks. They're no longer there. That's okay if it's your strategy. But I would also unload some of my aging running backs and rebuild this team with younger ones. Another year or two, and the value of those guys are just going to diminish. So for me, if I could get top value for Eckler and James Conner right now, you're not going to win this year with no quarterbacks. You might as well unload those guys, grab some draft capital, grab some younger guys, perhaps like a James Cook, throw them on your roster, get some quarterbacks, and then another year or two, you're out here ready to compete again. The next team up is Pritchard 03, which I really like his team. I like what he's doing with it. His team's loaded with young talent at every position. Bryce Young and Herbert as your QBs, with Pickett as your third. I also love the running back room with Breece Hall, Rashad White, James Cook, who I believe is in for a big year. Your tight end room is young with Pitts and Okonkwo. I believe your wide receivers will develop. He has T. Higgins, Jalen Hyatt, Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy. Obviously, some question marks with Jalen Hyatt. We haven't seen what he's able to do yet. Jerry Jeudy, we're not sure what's going on. He's injured. He's not injured. Russell Wilson can't throw the ball, so who knows? But the team here, to me, is one of the best young teams in the league. And he's young at every position. I think he's doing a really nice job building this team. I think I gave him some help as well, some advice. So, of course, I do like it. Team 504 cycle. QB room led by Mahomes is always a good thing. I love Aaron Rodgers as well. I believe his production is going to help fantasy owners this year. You do need another quarterback, though. They are tough to come by. But if you do, you'll be in a real good position to compete. The running back room, I'm not sold on. Dobbins, he's great when he's healthy, but that's rare. And Madison played well when he was called upon, but we'll see what he's like when he's an everyday back. I'm not saying he can't be good. I'm not saying he's not good. I'm saying we don't know if he's good, as an everyday back. I like your wide receivers, Waddle, Debo, Evans, Lamb. It's a star-studded wide receiver corps who's going to produce as long as they stay healthy. Tight ends are mid-tier guys who can carry their part in fantasy production. He's rolling out Njoku and Dolchich as his starters. They're going to be middle-of-the-pack tight ends, and that's really, if you have two of them, you should be able to compete with the guys around them. So hopefully, if you guys can stay healthy and you can, possibly trade and get yourself another running back or some running back help, you have a good chance at being in the money this year. Next up, I have South Sea Sailors. Let me pull up the roster here. Right here. QB room led with Prescott and Wilson, with Richardson and Derek Carr off the bench. You got 4 starting quarterbacks. You're in great position, not only for the quarterback, but a chance to win just in general. You have the ability to withstand bye weeks and injuries and still put up 2 quality quarterbacks each week. That's a good spot to start off with in August. Your running back room, Gibbs, Dillon, Herbert, Brian Robinson. Great combination that you can utilize in many different situations. You should be able to withstand injuries, bye weeks, and still get production from the running back. Your tight end room led by Kittle, is always a good thing, as long as he stays healthy. I'm not sold on Knox. He has competitions for targets well before Kincaid came in. Now Kincaid's there. He's going to be splitting targets. Hopefully Gabe Davis gets a little bit more. James Cook, probably going to get a few more. So I think Knox is going to be a tough tight end too on your team. But he's still a starter, and he still should put up some fantasy relevance for you. Your wide receiver room is young, filled with potential. I don't think anyone would be surprised if the reigning offensive rookie of the year was a top 5 this year, and Garrett Wilson. Quentin Johnston, if he develops to being the number 1 that they predict him to be, you have a great 1-2 punch for years to come. So next up, I have a boner for murder. This team was built around the tight ends, Andrews and Kelsey. You're not going to find a better 1-2 punch than that. The QB room looks a little bit better today than it did a week ago. Now that Dobbs is considered the starter in Arizona, whether he does get it or not, time will tell. Mixed with Cousins and Stroud, you have Murray about. So if Dobbs is a starter till Murray holds on the fort, you'll be running 3 starting quarterbacks throughout the year, injuries pending. but that's good. You know, in a 12-team league, 2 quarterback, if you can have 3 starters, you're above average. The team would use a facelift on its running backs. Let me see. So we have Jamal Williams and Delvin Cook. They're both going to be splitting time targets. Banking on them to be, number 1, number 2 is really going to be tough. Especially Jamal Williams. He was so touchdown dependent in that Detroit offense last year that I don't know if he has that same role this year. He may. I don't know, but he's just going to be splitting so many targets with Kamara after week 2. The wide receiver room is getting old, but Adams, Cooper, and Ridley should all produce heavy numbers this year. I love St. Brown. To me, he's a top 5 wide receiver. I wouldn't be shocked if he finished in the top 5 this year. Upgrading midseason might be difficult for this team without any 2024 draft capital, which would be difficult to manage through injuries and bye weeks. So you got your work cut out for you. Good team, but a lot of work to kind of compete. Next up, we have the real McCoy. Let's see how we pull him up quick. I keep pulling him. The real McCoy, tough QB room when it comes to relying on Geno Smith and Ritter as your only 2 starters. Geno can produce, but I don't believe enough to be in the top 12 category. I don't think Ritter will be in the top 12 category either. The running back room is led by Etienne and Stevenson. It's a great 1-2 punch with Miles Sanders and Isaiah Pacheco to fill in, flex, bye weeks, injuries. The wide receivers in this team stacked. Hill, A.J. Brown, Olave are all as about as solid as you're going to find. They're young, talented people, to build the team around. I'm not sold on your tight end room. Everett and Higbee just don't get it done for me. I do like the up-and-coming Kincaid, but it might take a year or 2 for him to actually really produce high fantasy volume. I like Kincaid. I think he's the future. I just don't know that this year. So it's going to be tough to upgrade. Essentially, all your 2024 draft capital is gone. Some other pieces are worth some. Maybe you can add some. It's tough. It's tough when you don't have 2024 draft capital mid-season to upgrade. That's what a lot of people are trying to accumulate once they kind of figure out who they are. That's why it's so important to hang on to it until you know who you are. We talk about that all the time, right, Ed? Hang on to that draft capital until you know who you are.
It changes.
Yeah. Next up, we have Geriatric Ward. Let me see if I can pull his team up. Here we are. Probably one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league. Josh Allen is QB1. Stafford is his QB2, but no depth behind it. To me, that spells trouble for teams down the stretch. When you only have 2 starting quarterbacks and one of them's Matt Stafford with the head injuries and stuff last year and talking about retirement and the way his wife is with mental health, he's 1 hit away from her pulling the plug and having him retire. And I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't happen this year. And Josh Allen, his play style, love it for fantasy football, but he's in the same boat. He just runs a lot, takes a lot of hits, and it's tough, to depend on him, even though he very seldomly misses games. But as your only 2 quarterbacks, you're really playing with fire. Running back room led with CMC and Aaron Jones, along with Tony Pollard. It's stout. I believe Pollard is going to be a top 5 running back this year. Now that he's an every down back, and it doesn't look like he's got much behind him to split touches with. I think he's going to be 20-plus touches a game without a doubt, and he's electric with the ball in his hand. So I think that, Tony Pollard's really going to boost this team. The wide receiver room, I feel, is a bit shaky. I think the better days are behind Kupp. His age is up there. Michael Thomas is the same. Ayuk is intriguing. But you're also starting CMC. So you're splitting points between the 2. Perhaps there's enough points in that team, depending on how that offense rolls this year. But it's tough when you're starting. Ayuk is essentially your 1 receiver, and your 1 running back is McCaffrey. It's tough. I love the tight end room with Darren Waller. I think it's a great piece to the team. He's the number 1 target in New York, and I believe he gets a lot of them. I also like Conklin, who was able to produce with Wilson. So with Rodgers as his QB, I think he's really going to produce. And they just bragged him up right from last year at Conklin. So I can only imagine what he's going to do with Rodgers whipping the ball at him. But behind that, you don't have much depth, and I think that's an issue. So let's get down to our two teams who I think are going to be there at the end. First one being Fantasy Clown. All right. So when I look at this team, it comes as no surprise that the QB room is stacked. Jimmy G, Danny D, Purdy, Trevor Lawrence. You won't find a much better QB room than in any two QB format in most leagues. It gives you all kinds of flexibility, whether it's trading, whether it's navigating injuries, whether it's starting two when other people are starting one. Whatever your strategy is, you have the upper hand at quarterback, and there's no denying that. Your running back room, solid and deep. You know how I feel about Cam Akers. I'm not high on him, but when he does stay healthy, he's good. You know, there's no doubt about it, and he's going to be the bell cow this year. So as long as he stays healthy, and even if he doesn't, I mean, you're rolling out Barkley, Jacobs, Walker, Pierce. I mean, you just throw haymakers one day after another. These guys will not only produce this year, but for years to come. You know, they're young and they're gonna be good pieces to build around. I'm not sold on the wide receiver room, but I guess if there's one area not to be sold on, it's the wide receiver room. Mooney, Campbell, Collins, and Jones just doesn't get it done for me at the wide receiver aspect. I love the addition of Addison. I think he's going to be a phenomenal. He's going to be Devontae Smith. Similar. I don't know if he's going to be as good as Devontae Smith, but Kirk Cousins is going to throw the ball 40 times a game. I mean, it's just the way it is, and he's going to get a lot of those targets, you know, and with the double teams Justin Jefferson's going to face and Hockenson, I don't know if you can cover Addison one-on-one, and I think Kirk Cousins is going to find him often. I think that's a really good pickup out of all the wide receivers. After your tight ends with Hockenson, it falls off quickly. I don't think Bryant is a good option for number two tight end. I do think that overall this is one of the best teams in the league because you have so much flexibility with your running backs and your quarterbacks. If this was my team, I would absolutely, without a doubt, go get yourself another tight end and be one of the top teams in the league. So good for you, Ed. That's a nice team. Then we have who I think is going to win or be facing Ed is Steelers Nation. Let me pull it up on my end. And one of the reasons why I really like this team is I just love the quarterbacks as far as their fantasy value. I'm not sure about Justin Fields as far as going out to win a game for you, but to give you 40 points on any given day, I love his value. Jalen Hurts, he's a top 3 quarterback, you know, so you're rolling out basically a 2 top 6 quarterbacks in a two quarterback format. Then you're coming back with your running backs and Najee Harris, Jarrett McKinnon. You know, obviously Jarrett McKinnon's not the guy you really want to rely on as your number 2 running back. However, he consistently put up points last year, and I think that if that's a guy you have to put in, he's not going to hurt you. He's probably not going to get you the 40 that some of the other guys can give you on a given night, but he can get the job done as a number 2. A little bit of a dialogue here is one of the best combinations of QB rooms in the league. Hurts and Fields should be fantasy juggernauts this year. Jared Goff is your number 3. I'm high on Jared Goff this year. I believe he's a top 10 fantasy production quarterback with all those weapons he put around him. I can see Jared Goff being a really good year. The running back room is a little scarce. I like Najee. I believe he has a bounce back year. McKinnon is steady double-digit producer each week. I believe another running back will be needed at some point to be brought into this team to get you over the top. The wide receiver room has steady contributors all throughout the team. No one stands out as a top wide receiver, but they all should produce. You know, you got guys like Keenan Allen and George Pickens and Lockett and Sutton, just all guys that have just produced mid-tier points and, you know, touchdown dependent to get you over the top into the top 15 wide receivers. The tight end led by Goddard is a good start. really, it's Gesicki who is going to be the question mark. If he returns to his 2021 form, he could really help your team out. Taysom Hill and Hayden Hurst as your only backups gets a little dicey. But Taysom Hill's one of those guys, you throw him out there in a week that you need him, he somehow gets you 20 points, and you're happy you got him. Overall, I would upgrade tight end and bring in another reliable running back, and this team is ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about Taysom Hill. I have him on a couple teams, and he's a perfect best ball tight end. Probably where you don't have to figure out which is the 3 touchdown week, but you get the 3 touchdown week. But yeah, I agree with that. I'm anxious to see what the analytics are, Dan. As I was looking at these teams, I think Geriatric Ward is the team that I'm most fear out of all these teams. So anxious to see where they show up on the analytics and then versus your top 2.
So you're right. You were right, and I was right on one each. Geriatric Ward is projected to be, based on our simulator, the best team in the league. And so you must have seen some things that the simulator sees as well. But Steelers Nation is the number 2 team, so I was 1 out of 2. But what I liked about your team, Ed, was the flexibility that you have with your team, and that's one thing simulator doesn't really go into account, is how flexible you can be. I mean, you can go any direction you want to upgrade your team, and I think if you make the right move here or there, which is what I would do, you know what I mean? I think that you are the best team in the league because of your depth pieces that you have.
And yeah, it can't account for trades or waiver pickups, obviously, because it doesn't know what that is. And I'm a grinder, so I mean that is true. I mean, I try to stay very flexible so that it doesn't really matter the outcome. I kind of reflect back on a team that I liked last year, went 6-0, and then all of a sudden ran into injuries, and I chased it a little bit, and then all of a sudden it went 0-8 for the last 8 games, and I got the number 2 pick, and that still worked out. And basically I kept the first round pick in tow by just saying, hey, this team isn't good enough to win, and next year it will be, meaning this year. So yeah, I think flexibility is a key. But as I looked at it, I was looking at Geriatric Ward and said, I think that team. Now, if it doesn't win this year, it's all over. Like, it's got to win this year. So I don't know if the right moves will be made. But, it's kind of like I always say that if you have Pat Mahomes or you have Travis Kelce, you have a shot to win. He doesn't have either of those players. But what he does have is Josh Allen and CMC and Cooper Kupp. And that just feels like top players at every position there. And it just feels like, geez, if those 3 guys stay healthy, it might be just tough on a given week. These guys can all put up ridiculous, PPR points. Like Cooper Kupp can be a league winner, just one guy, and he only needs one guy to go off. And yet CMC could be a league winner, and he's only one guy. And then Josh Allen can be a league winner, and he's only another guy. And I guess I'm looking at it, and he's to go 1 out of 3, and he has a league winner.
But a guy like Cooper Kupp, what scares me about him is he needs 2 guys to stay healthy. And his quarterback, you know what I mean? And, if they got to roll Stenson Bennett out there, we saw what happened last year when Stafford went out. It was a mess. You didn't want any receiver on the head roster. So really it's dependent on both of them staying healthy.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
he's stacking it that way with Stafford and Kupp. If they both stay healthy, you're right. It's going to be tough to beat.
I guess I'm looking at it and saying, well, Allen can be a top 3 quarterback. CMC can be a top 3 running back. Kupp can be a top 3 receiver. Mm-hmm. And honestly, Waller can be a top 3 tight end. And I guess I'm looking at it.
He's got top 3 in every position.
He's got a position where he can just say, hey, he doesn't really need them all to be good. He can have an injury or 2, and he's still got a top 3 player in another position. And that's what sort of scares me. Now, all 4 of those guys, except for Allen, are old. And so, this is the year. Like, you can't do it next year.
He's relying on Stafford to stay healthy all year.
Yeah, that's true.
That's tough.
Yeah, that's true. There's no quarterback behind it. So
and if he gets hurt, nobody takes him on a trade. nobody's taking him and saying, "Hey, I'll ride it out with him next year." He's done.
Yeah, and yeah, he doesn't have the pieces. I
Yeah.
mean, to go get other stuff. I mean,
Great team, but I'm with you. It's dependent on him staying healthy.
oh, yeah, very good. Hey, good stuff. Thank you guys all for watching and the preview of Clownheads 5. This may be one of my favorite Clownheads teams that I have personally. And this is a league that Brad and Justin play in with me, so it's always fun to, to play against them. And each week as we recap the week that was, it'll be fun for us to kind of recap our matchups that we have as well. So look forward to each of you guys. And after week one, Brad and I play against each other week one. So I'm sure we'll have a spirited back and forth and, with week one and, who's better. So we'll get to roll that out following week one. And as we, have those head-to-head matchups. So thank you guys for joining us. Hit the like button, hit the bell to subscribe to the channel, and any comments you have, we always appreciate those as well. And for now, so long, and we'll see you next week.